Hello everyone, thanks for joining me today. I hope you're enjoying the Global Schools Festival. My name's Delia Kidd and I'm a Senior ELT Research Manager here at Cambridge University Press. And I'm joining you today to talk about something that I feel is really important and forms part of a big theme that we're talking about during this festival. The topic is 3 ways to bring sustainability into the primary classroom. And I want to start today by showing you the winning invention of a competition run last year by Disney UK. This competition followed a study which Disney conducted with 1,000 children in the UK to understand their thoughts and feelings on global issues that are around with us today. They then invited children to submit an idea for a new invention that could help solve one of these issues. The winning idea was this one, the magic magnet plastic catcher. So this winning entry designed a new way to catch plastic in the oceans, which made all of the ocean animals happier and cleaner. And what Disney did was they took this idea and they animated it in a nice Disney style. And you can see the winning entry and other entries at this address with littleinventors.org. The research itself was really interesting. So according to the Little Inventors website, some of the insights gleaned from this survey with these 1,000 students that were aged between 4 and 14 years old included things like 90% of children wish they could invent something to help make the world a better place. 64% felt that they had the power to change the world around them. 48% were prepared to stand up for the things they believed in. 23% had already campaigned for important issues at school. And 9% had even written to the Prime Minister or their local MP about an issue that they care about. This correlates with research that we've also done here at Cambridge in the past, including through a story competition where we invited children to write stories on any topic they chose. It was really interesting when we asked these, when we got these entries, as many of them wrote on topics of environment and global issues. So what this and the inventions in the competition show is that children are prepared to tackle these issues, and they have the imagination and the problem-solving skills so desperately needed to do so. Children want to be part of the solution so that their own futures can be brighter. And therefore, we as educators have the responsibility to foster and empower this in the classroom. This is what I'm here to talk to you about today. By the way, there are plenty of other amazing inventions to see on the Little Inventors website, including one of my absolute favorites, this one. So this is where the whale gobbles up all of the litter in the oceans, making it a nice, cleaner place for other animals to live in. So being aware of global issues and having the understanding of how we play our part is one of the key 21st century skills. The Cambridge Life Competencies Framework includes social responsibilities as one of its key competencies. Here are some of the core areas from the framework that relate to social awareness and sustainable practices and how they relate specifically to young learners. The first is understanding personal responsibilities as part of a social group. And so the competency, an example of a competency within this area is understanding responsibilities within a social group. And for young learners, this might mean they are able to describe the roles and responsibilities that they have as members of a social group. And such social groups could include things like their family, their friendship groups, their school class, and so on. The second area is around understanding global issues. And this includes things like recognizing personal impact on global issues. And for young learners, that might mean that they can demonstrate understanding of the need to share and protect resources. They can positively participate in activities to safeguard the environment. So for example, through recycling, through saving water, and so on. And they can use consumables wisely. So this is what we can expect learners to be able to do, young learners at the end of primary. So they're working towards these kinds of skills. It's therefore important for us to consider what our role as educators is in the development of these skills during the primary years for our learners. It can be unhelpful and possibly even damaging to force these on our learners. We risk scaring them with doom and gloom tales of global issues and lecturing them on the responsibility that they have to fix them. We don't want to make our learners anxious or stressed about these topics. We want them to be engaged and motivated by the idea of helping out and solving these issues. And as we've seen from some of the research, from these wonderful inventions that they've created, children have an innate desire and a motivation to solve issues like these. And so what we need to do is to empower and to support them to do so by fostering their development in these skills. So bringing topics of sustainability into the classroom doesn't need to be a challenging or daunting prospect. Particularly in English language teaching, many learning materials already include topics around global issues and activities promoting sustainable practices, such as through stories or often through CLIL sections, which practice the skills outlined in the framework here. So today I'm going to show you 3 ideas for how you can easily integrate sustainability topics into your classroom using ELT materials and more generally through your general everyday classroom practice. So the first, oh, by the way, you can find more information about social responsibilities and all of our Cambridge Life competencies on our website here, and reading these booklets which have lots of information about what the competencies are and how to implement them in the classroom. So first of all, one idea to bring sustainability into the classroom is by using classroom routines or bringing it into everyday classroom routines. As we saw in the previous slide, one of the areas under social responsibilities is understanding the roles and responsibilities that learners have as part of a social group. So starting with the classroom as a social group, children can become familiar with the types of roles that they play as part of everyday activities. This could include things such as assigning roles for them. Roles like litter monitor or recycler, scrap paper monitor, for example. These can be changed daily or weekly so that all students get the chance to play different roles and get the experience of doing those roles. Class Dojo has a really nice free to download resource available, what they call class jobs cards. So these small cards can be cut out and they can be passed around to learners, and that's their role for the day. So here are some nice examples: trash monitor, supplies manager, plant caretaker. They're really lovely and engaging cards and can be really motivating for learners to take on that role. Now, obviously, we're in the situation at the moment where a lot of the learning is happening at home because of the pandemic. So we might want to consider how we can adapt these types of roles for home learning environments. So you may want to think about what kind of roles could a learner be doing at home. Maybe they can engage with their parents in some way about a daily role or a daily task that they're going to get involved in. The second idea is about regularly using recycled materials for arts and crafts projects. Now in primary, arts and crafts projects are very popular, they come up a lot, children really love them, and even in home learning environments, we're using arts and craft projects quite a lot, we see them coming up quite a lot. And so what you can do here, right from the start of term with your class, you can encourage students to bring in their recycling from home. Things like empty bottles, cardboard boxes, egg cartons, and so on, so that you have a handy stash of materials for your projects. When it comes to doing the arts and crafts projects, you can encourage students to think about which of the materials to use when doing the projects, which ones are going to be the most appropriate and helpful for that project. If they're learning at home remotely, you can encourage learners to keep their own stash at home for exactly the same reason, for when they come to do their arts and crafts projects. And again, get them to think about their own personal stash of recycled materials and which objects are going to be the most useful for their project. And finally, you can put up classroom posters to remind learners about the small steps that they can take every day to be more sustainable. These could be downloaded. So for example, Twinkle and Green Education Foundation have some really nice ones for free. Or you can get students to create their own. You may want to create 2 versions of posters, one in English and one in their first language. And that way they can really engage with the content of the poster, they can understand what the responsibilities are, but then they can also see how to talk about that in English and start using the English language to describe what they're doing and what the posters are encouraging. Again, if they're remote learning, you can encourage each learner to create a poster to put up at home. For example, you could ask them to create a poster that details what goes into the recycling bin and what goes into general refuse. And that could be very helpful for the rest of the family as well. So those are just some ways that you can bring sustainability into everyday classroom routines. The second idea is about creating projects that have meaning. As I mentioned earlier, many English language teaching course materials include topics related to sustainability, and this is particularly true in many of the projects that are used, such as in CLIL sections. Projects are a great way to give learners hands-on experience that's meaningful and authentic, while also giving them the opportunity to communicate and practice their English. To take these projects a step further, there are a few things you can consider. The first is by providing an incentive, by setting up the outcome of the project as one that will make a change to their community. So something is going to happen as a result of their project that will make the community or make the space that they're living in a better one. So we could take, for example, this activity, which comes from the course Power Up or Life Adventures. And what they're encouraged to do here is to think about an activity that will help to improve or look after the planet. And their task is to write these down as little thought bubbles, what each activity that they're going to do to help the planet. To take this a step further then, you could encourage each learner to then encourage 3 more people to also create their own thought bubbles about how they're going to save the planet. Perhaps as kind of pledges. So what are they going to pledge to do to help the planet? For example, they could ask their mum to write one, they could ask their neighbour to write one, or they could ask their little sister to write one. This way, it's not just them that's taking on the responsibility of doing things to help the planet, but they're encouraging other people to do it as well, including adults. So they're kind of passing that responsibility forward as well. Other examples of meaningful projects might be something like if you've asked your students to design a garden, maybe this could be actually a community garden that they're designing, and the best, or the voted for best designs of gardens could then get submitted to the local council or authority as a way of saying, here's a garden that we've designed, can we get this planted somewhere in our community? Or another example, maybe you could ask students to design new and inventive ways to use plastic bags. And these ways could get advertised in posters and put up in local shops and supermarkets. There's lots of things that you can do to try and make those projects just a little bit more meaningful for learners and actually make some kind of change in their community. The second idea is to carry out projects with other schools. So what you can do here is you can link up with schools either in your neighbourhood or perhaps even abroad internationally. And there are several websites and initiatives that support this, including iEarn.org, which focuses specifically on bringing schools together to work on meaningful projects, things that will help the environment and the community and so on. So with this, children from different schools can work together on the same projects, either in tandem or perhaps taking different roles and bringing it all together to create a complete project. This is motivating for learners as it provides meaningful interaction and potentially some incentive through some healthy competition between the different schools. And the third idea is to ask learners to bring in evidence of what they've done. So if we look at that previous activity where they have to write speech bubbles of how they're going to help save the planet, we can go a step further here and ask them to bring in proof of them actually carrying out those everyday activities. So for example, if they wrote that they're going to turn off the light switch every time they leave the room, then we can ask them to bring in proof of them doing so, perhaps either using, taking a photo of them doing it, or taking a video on a smartphone. Or perhaps they could ask for a certified letter from their parents. Parents have to sign to say, yes, my child has done this. They could ask their parents to give stickers every time they achieve one of their pledges. And this promotes the involvement of parents too. And I'm sure most parents would be delighted to see their children being more responsible at home. The third way that we can bring sustainability into the classroom is through stories. So using stories to promote awareness and discussion of issues and topics around sustainability. There's arguably no greater tool in the primary teacher's toolbox than the story. Not only do children love stories, but they carry great potential to raise awareness of important messages. And this is true also of global and sustainable practices. Again, in English language teaching resources, we already have a wealth, contains many, many topics within their stories. Different kinds of stories that talk about different global issues, including this one, which is a story taken from Cambridge Primary Path. And this is a story of a little girl who lives in an area that is annually visited by millions of monarch butterflies. And she's confused and a little concerned one year when the butterflies don't arrive. And she starts looking into the reasons why the butterflies are late, or what's going on, what's causing issues with the butterflies. And she discovers that there are lots of things that are happening to their habitats and to the food that they eat, and the places that they stop off along the way, caused by human activity, that means that the butterflies are delayed. So taking a story like this one, which has a very clear message about a species and how human activity is affecting the numbers of the species, there are several things that we can do to exploit the story. The first is to use dialogic reading techniques to engage learners in the issues of the story. And what this means is asking learners questions throughout the story as a way of encouraging noticing of its key themes, why the characters have taken certain actions, what the cause and effect of those actions are, and so on. By asking these kind of questions, we're getting learners to really think about the story in more depth and to really engage with what the messages are that are coming out of the story. You can make it personal as well. So ask students if there's a similar situation in their country. Is there a similar species that is under threat in this example? So here the story is about the monarch butterfly, but perhaps in their country there's another kind of species that is in decline due to human activity. An example here in the UK and US is the decline of bees, honeybees, due to the use of pesticides and habitat loss. So it's important to ask your learners about why the decline of this species is happening and why that might be a problem for the people of their country. And finally, give some call to action. Think about, well, what can we do about this? In the case of the butterfly story, they might be thinking, well, okay, what can we do to support the butterflies to help remove those obstacles for their journey? And this might lead back to meaningful projects that we saw before. So it could lead to some kind of classroom project that would have a great impact on the community. Finally, there is a lot of power in asking students to write their own stories as well. Just like with the inventions, the remarkable amount of creativity that children have means that they can come up with some truly imaginative stories. As I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, we ran a story competition in 2018. And during that time, we received 7,000 stories from children all over the world. And we were overwhelmed with just how clever and imaginative those stories were. And we also noticed that many of the stories were about global issues and about the environment. So I'd like to end this talk by reading you one of these stories. And this is a story from a girl called Natalia in the Ukraine, and she's 11 years old. And she has an important message to give through this story. One day, forest animals, birds and fish came to the riverbank. They discussed unbearable conditions of their life. Ducks, frogs, fish complained of dirty water in the river. Bears, foxes, squirrels, moose, owls shouted together, "There is a pollution in our forest. Plastic bags, bottles, cans, and other litter are around. Never our forest was so dirty, and forests and river were so dirty. We are in danger." At that time, the boy and his dad went fishing. They came to the river and were surprised to see a meeting of animals. They heard their cries for help. Dad took photos and video. The boy and his dad got home and posted videos and photos on the internet. They also wrote posters. "People, save the nature, air and water, forests and rivers, they die with us." Next day, the boy went to the school. He told about what he saw and heard on the riverbank. Thousands of children and adults came out to protect nature. The presidents of all the countries of the world issued decrees on saving of the environment and penalties for violations, because it was about the most important thing, about health and life. How I wish it was not a fairy tale. Thank you very much for listening to my talk, and I hope you've taken away some great ideas to implement in your classroom, and enjoy the rest of the Schools Festival. Thank you.